Hello and welcome to A Bit Too Much to Think live on KUST Radio. Got an amazing show for you today. Huge show. I've got a couple of big things to talk about. We're talking about women's rights. That won't be controversial at all, I guarantee it. We are going to be talking about the recent attempted mail bombings. We're going to honor a man who helped us win World War II. And we are going to talk to Senator Elizabeth Warren, apparently, may be on the show. So that'll be interesting to see if we can get her to call in to discuss her recent claims of Native American heritage. So we are going to talk about all of that today and listen to some classic rock. And you are going to get opinions and ideas that you may not like. All right. So to start it off, we're going to be talking about some women's rights, a little bit of feminism here, because that's never controversial and never goes poorly. So I'm gonna be going over McSally v. Rumsfeld, which was a Supreme Court case from, I believe it was seen in 2005 is when it went to the Supreme Court, but it started in 2001. So Martha McSally, who is now a representative in the House for a district in Arizona. She is the first American woman to fly in combat. I should be clear here that she is technically running for Senate, and I should just make it clear that, she's not running for Senate. She's running for the House again. Or no, I think she's running for Senate. I don't know. She's running for re-election. I should make it clear that I do not endorse her in any way. But she is the first American woman to fly in combat. An A-10 pilot, she's the definition of a badass, strong woman, though you would never hear that from modern feminists because she is in the Republican Party. Yeah. So in 2001, when she was a major in the Air Force, which is an 04, for those of you that know a little bit about the military, she filed a lawsuit against the Department of Defense, and at the time it was, what's his name? Something Rumsfeld. Was it Donald Rumsfeld? Something like that. So she filed a lawsuit due to a regulation that required her and all women on her base to wear an abaya, A-B-A-Y-A, or a headscarf whenever she left the base. Now, this was in Saudi Arabia, which explains why she was required to. She argued that the regulation violated the First and Fifth Amendments, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993, and was unfair in the treatment of women. So she argued that being forced to wear a headscarf not only promotes Islam, because that is the reason that they wear headscarves primarily in Saudi Arabia, and she also was saying that it violated, obviously it was unfair to women because the regulation was only that women had to wear the headscarf. It had nothing to do with whether or not men had to wear a headscarf. Obviously, they don't in Saudi Arabia, so they weren't required to. And she also argued that it violated the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993, which I believe just expanded on the First Amendment and just said you can't force someone to practice a religion, which, again, it kind of makes sense considering the reason for the headscarf in Saudi Arabia is because they basically have a religious oligarchy there, though there is a king, but it's primarily a religious oligarchy. We all know that. And the reason she had to wear it is because, they didn't want to insult Saudi Arabia, but she didn't feel it was that way. She felt it was unconstitutional. So, after she filed the lawsuit, in 2002, her wing commander lifted the travel regulation. So he said that you're not required to wear the headscarf, but it was still highly encouraged. And she argued that in practice, the regulation basically remained because they highly encouraged it, which meant that every single woman basically had to do it. If you're not in the military, whenever something is highly encouraged, that means do it or you're on a crap list. So you almost have to do it, which means that it basically, even though it wasn't required, it was pretty much required. And so in 2002, after the regulation was lifted by her wing commander, she also, in addition to arguing that the practice remained, even though it wasn't officially on the books, She also wanted her attorney's fees and costs paid because she argued that she was in the right, and because she was in the right, her attorney fees should be covered by the people that lost the lawsuit. So, in 2003, the Bob Stump National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2013 was passed, and this is a quote from, I believe it's like, what is it, judiciary.gov or something like that. It prohibited the military from requiring or formally urging servicewomen to wear the abaya, or however the heck you pronounce that. So, a victory for her. And the reason that this actually went to, I believe it went to the Supreme Court because of the court fees. And I'm not sure if she actually got the fees paid for. That's not the interesting part of this legislation. What's interesting to me is the fact that she basically argued that it's not only is it unconstitutional to force women to blend into a society that very clearly treats them as second class, but just generally, like, it's wrong in a general sense to force women to wear something. Now, I actually have a woman here. Woman, do you believe that it's wrong for men to force women to wear something?
It is very wrong for men to force women to wear something. Women should be able to wear whatever they want.
Thank you very much, woman. I always appreciate you being on here. So there you have it, an actual woman saying that it is wrong to force women to wear something. What do you know? Maybe some countries in certain areas practicing certain beliefs should, recognize constitutional rights of women. And not like recognize it as like an American constitution, but recognize it in the idea of, these rights are inherent to people. They have a deeper meaning, a deeper placement in humanity, and just by nature of being a person, you have these basic rights. And this is something that that Locke talked about in the Second Treatise of Government, life, liberty, and property. And it's something that the Founding Fathers wholeheartedly believed, with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, obviously, there were cultural things at the time of the writings, but those writings led to, women being able to vote, women being able to be equal citizens, and it led to women having a lot of the equal rights that they enjoy today. And I don't think it's wrong to state that that I don't want to say that it's a violation of human rights, because that makes it sound like there's like a genocide going on. But it's a violation of basic human, I don't know, decency, dignity maybe? Yeah, human dignity that all people should have available to them, which is that they should be able to wear what they want within reason, say what they want within reason. And I don't think it's out of reason for a woman to show her hair. Like, honestly, if that's what turns a guy on, he needs to see a lot of therapists, and maybe spend some time on the in a happy padded room with a jacket where he's always hugging himself. So, yeah, there you have it. A little bit of women's rights for you. Women should be able to wear whatever they want. And I believe that Martha McSally is an absolute badass. Again, first American woman to fly in combat. That's awesome. Like, she was an A-10 pilot, the first female pilot to fly a combat mission. Like, that's so cool. And it kind of goes back, it's really interesting to see, because if you go back to World War II, there were these women that flew planes from the manufacturing location to like an Air Force base. And they were technically employed, I believe it was by the DoD. I can't remember what their names were, but look them up. They're very interesting. It was during World War II. But then you finally come to, today, and American women are able to fly in combat. And yeah, I just think it's very interesting that, this woman, she may be in the Republican Party, which I think that a lot of modern feminists consider to be a sexist party full of, horrible pigs. But she is a feminist. She literally fought for women's rights in court. She again, she was a pioneer of women's success in America. I think that she should very much be considered a modern ideal of feminism, which is severely lacking in today's society, where they're more concerned with man-spreading than the beating of wives in the Middle East. Uh, yeah, yeah. If you want to find the real feminists, they're the one that are fighting against that and fighting for, I don't know, either the UN or just fighting for some kind of change. There's a lot of women in Iran right now fighting against the requirement to wear headscarves, exactly the thing that Martha McSally fought for. Uh, yeah, I think that's good stuff. And I think it's a little ridiculous that you don't hear about it from anyone ever. Though I'm sure, I don't know. This was in 2001. When I was 2001, in 2001, I was 6. So I don't know if this was actually a major news thing. But it was really cool to read about. I thought it was very interesting. Uh, yeah, women are equal people. I even had a real woman say it live on air. What do you know? Super cool. All right. So, uh, I'm not against any one faith. I just want to make that clear. I'm not against any one belief. If someone really wants to believe that women should be subservient, believe it if you really want to. This is something I talked about like 2 weeks ago. You can believe whatever you want. You just can't always act on it. So, I feel like I say it so a lot today. Probably every time, but a lot today especially. However, that's kind of beside the point. Um, Even if there can be people that believe women to be subservient, they shouldn't be. They absolutely should not be. They should be equal people in the eyes of the law. And anything and any place that violates that, I think, is not only undemocratic, but quite frankly, it doesn't belong here in the 21st century. And I would say it's backwards. And I think that there's a lot of people that like to pretend as though, there's some law, backwards laws about, adultery and backwards laws about, I don't know. In certain parts of the world, there's just a lot of backwards laws about women's rights. And I think that's a serious problem, and no one will talk about it. Seriously, ask a modern feminist, ask a gender studies professor if they know anything about the laws in Iran forcing women to wear headscarves, or Saudi Arabia where women were just given the right to drive recently. And I almost guarantee that they will know nothing about it, because modern feminism has basically failed women. And that's kind of another aside where I could go into the many reasons for that. But the summing up, McSally v. Rumsfeld, it's a very interesting case. It was basically resolved before it met the Supreme Court, which is interesting, because the what was it called? The Bob Stump National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2003 ended the issue before it was really decided. So, very unique case, one definitely worth looking into. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to a little bit of classic rock here, because I'm sure there's some people here who are sick of hearing me always talk in their face. So we're going to kick it off with the song Smokin' by the band Boston. Hi, this is Sam with A Bit Too Much to Think. Unfortunately, due to copyright reasons, we cannot upload the music to YouTube. So if you'd like to listen to it and get the full experience, listen to us live 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. on Fridays on Radio KUST on Mixlr. That's mixlr.com/KUST-radio. Thanks for listening. All right, welcome back. That was Smokin' by Boston. It's a wonderful song. I actually realized that's the song that plays when during the montage in South Park in the episode with Kyle's dad being the ultimate online troll. I realized that was the song that played, and I didn't do that intentionally, but hey, throwback to South Park. That whole thing with him being a troll was absolutely hilarious. It was a very good storyline. I like that they brought back the guy from the World of Warcraft episode, which was funny. Fun fact, that's the episode that won them an Emmy. Yeah, South Park won an Emmy, just in case you thought Emmys meant something. All right, so the next part I want to talk about is the recent mail bombings that have been going on, also attempted bombings via mail. One thing that's really interesting is a lot of people are saying that these are like false flags because the mail is not postmarked and the bombs very clearly look non-functional, very obviously. And anyone who I had like a tiny amount of IED training during my time in ROTC during the field training portion of my training, and yeah, no, these are not functional IEDs. I can assure you with 100% certainty. The pictures they're showing. So, and in the official report, they say that the packages are actually mailed, and they even say that the packages were postmarked. Because I'm looking at the official report. You can find it on, I found it on thehill.com /policy, and yeah, there's just a thing. It's the full criminal complaint, and I believe that's from Jeff Sessions. And my thing is, I don't think that's a false flag. I just think they're not releasing real pictures of the bombs so that no one knows exactly how to do it again. And I think jumping to the conclusion of, oh, it must be a false flag, I don't agree with that. I think that there needs to be a lot more proof. And I understand that there's motive to create a false flag, but I really don't think that it's a realistic enough theory. So until further notice, I'm gonna say that the mail bombings are in fact, or attempted mail bombings are in fact real. But yeah, so I want to talk about those for a little bit and go over the full criminal complaint. And you can find it all over. You should look at it. So it says, it describes the IEDs to start, and it describes who they were sent to. And they all came from the return sender of Debbie Wasserman Schultz at a particular address in Florida. Schultz Office 1, actually, is what's naming it. Each envelope misspelled Florida in the Schultz Office 1 return address is Florides. So, the return address was typed in black ink on white paper, so they clearly had a plan to send a bunch of them, which is bad. You shouldn't be sending bombs to people. And apparently this person... See, what's weird to me about that, the fact that Florida wasn't even spelled right, is either they didn't care how effective it was, or, at least in my mind, they didn't expect it to work anyway. Which is why there was a typo, or they were just doing it so fast, or they're crazy. Honestly, to do the kind of thing, I think you have to be crazy, so that's going to be the theory that I'm going with more than anything. But yeah, these attempted bombings, they describe them in the complaint as IEDs, and they list all the people that they went to. And it says they were largely similar in design and construction. They each consisted of approximately 6 inches of PVC pipe, a small clock, a battery, wiring, and energetic material. See, this is different from most of the pictures that they showed because the pictures didn't show them with a battery, and most of the PVC was not shown with any sort of explosive material in it. So these pictures that they're releasing are not the actual pictures of the packages. So that, a lot of people are using that to say, oh, it must just be, it must just be a false flag. It's not. They're just not releasing the real pictures of the packages, I think. And it kind of goes into each individual that receives these packages. And then it goes down, very specifically for each package. And it's not super interesting. And they go into the DNA analysis then. And they find that there's a fingerprint identified to the guy that they caught. And it was on the Waters package. Yeah, who was that sent to? Oh, Maxine Waters, yeah. So they found dude, she's crazy. Not as crazy as this guy, but she's nuts if you ever heard her talk. Anyway, So they found a fingerprint on there. It was analyzed by a bunch of people. There's DNA associations from that they got, some DNA from the Florida Department of Law who arrested this guy. He was found in Florida. And it doesn't really say anything other than talking about his social media posts, which I really haven't looked into them, but it says that a lot of the posts had misspellings, and they describe it as consistent with the packages, including spelling Hillary for Hillary instead of Hillary, and Schultz misspelled as Shultz rather than Schultz. And then let's see. There's a post dated October 24th, 2018, critical of, among others, President Barack Obama and George Soros, and that post occurred after the recovery of the Soros package. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the whole thing. It's just very frustrating that, that this crazy dude, it's a crazy guy doing crazy things. Anthrax was getting mailed before that. Was it maybe somewhat recently? Donald Trump Jr. got a package that turned out was filled with cornstarch, but everyone thought it was anthrax. And that's not getting nearly as much attention. It didn't get nearly as much attention, though, to be fair, it was one package versus 13 packages or however many it were. Yeah, so the guy who mailed him, again, I'm not going to say his name. I don't think that people commit crimes deserve any sort of fame or any sort of media attention. I think they deserve to just be thrown in jail and rot unknown to the people for the rest of their lives. But he's been charged with 5 federal crimes for sending explosive devices to more than a dozen Democratic political figures, celebrities, and news organizations. According to Sessions, Sessions described his alleged actions as unacceptable, obviously, and he faces up to 58 years in prison. I have no idea how old this guy is, but I'm guessing that's basically a life sentence, at least almost. I'm actually surprised that he's only getting charged with 5 federal crimes when he sent 13 packages. Actually, what would be really funny is if one of the crimes he's charged with was like mail fraud. Like they added it on just to add like crimes because he put a false return address. That would actually just be funny to me. So anyways, there's a little bit of facts about the recent mail bombings. Go ahead and look into the facts for yourself. I'm just saying I don't think it was a false flag. I think they're just not releasing the real pictures. We shouldn't talk about this guy's name because he's a POS, and that's piece of, I'm not allowed to say. But, yeah, look into it for yourself. That's kind of just some of the facts about the case that they have right now. So that's kind of interesting. The next part I want to talk about is a much better person than the guy who mailed bombs to people. I have no idea how to pronounce his name, but he's a guy who sabotaged the Nazis' nuclear hopes during World War II. This is from an article from NPR dated October 22nd, 2018. And it's an obituary of... Okay, so this is spelled Joachim is his first name, which I'm guessing is like Joachim, but it's not Joachim. It's like Joachim or something. And the last name is, I believe it's pronounced Roneberg. It's Roenneberg. So I'm going to just call him Mr. Roneberg. So basically, this guy, he died at the age of 99 recently. And pour one out for this guy because he was a real hero of World War II. When he was 23, him and a team of other resistance fighters parachuted into a snowy mountain range in Norway, skied to the Vermork hydroelectric power plant, and bombed its catch of heavy water, deuterium oxide, which was a rare fluid that the Germans were hoping to use in the process of building an atomic bomb. Now, I don't know if you've ever watched Man in the High Castle. I don't think it's that great of a show, but I've watched a couple episodes, and the basic premise is the Germans beat the Americans to getting a nuke, and because of it, they won World War II, and America was split uh, into two parts: the Japanese Pacific states, so like the west half of it was owned by Japan, the east half of it was owned by Germany, and stayed like as a Nazi state. And I mean, this is really important. I imagine if the Nazis got a nuclear bomb, that would be absolutely insane. And they would have used it, and I think the history of the entire world would be very different, wildly different. Um, so yeah, this guy Ronenberg, uh, God bless him. He really helped save the entire world, really. So it says that he fled Norway after Germany invaded them in 1940. He reached Britain and trained with the UK's Special Operations Executive to learn guerrilla tactics and plot against the occupation. And they eventually found the place. Let's see. The operation's codename was Gunnerside. It has been hailed as one of the most successful clandestine operations of the war, and it was accomplished without firing a shot. Ronenberg and his team used their mountaineering skills, skiing through treacherous guarded terrain and scaling cliffs to avoid detection, both to destroy their target and to escape the furious pursuit that followed. The daring operation has inspired stories and books and the 1965 war movie The Heroes of Telemark, starring Kirk Douglas and Richard Harris. Yeah, I guess a Norwegian public broadcaster, NRK, produced a popular 6-part series called The Heavy Water War, and it's talking about how they had this stuff called heavy water that they were going to use to build a nuke. He describes where is it? So in 2013 he was talking to the BBC and talked about his experience there. And he basically just talked about how there was a bunch of things that just happened to work out, which to me I think spells a little bit of maybe some level of divine intervention. And he said, when they landed miles off target during a storm, they found crucial supplies in a mountain cabin. When they needed to cut a padlock at the plant, they used a pair of metal shears that Ronenberg had brought along by chance. And one of the most nerve-wracking moments, he later said, came after the explosives had been planted. They had cut the fuses to give them only 30 seconds to escape, and they heard a tiny, insignificant pop, he said. It was almost an anticlimax because they were expecting this huge explosion. And then Germans immediately flooded the mountain looking for the people who did it. But the explosives worked, even as anticlimactic as they might have been. And the guy along with his team was able to help determine the direction that World War II ended up, which is fascism being destroyed and a lot of freedom being brought to a lot of the world. So, once again, pour one out for this guy. I'm going to look up his name again. I have no idea how to pronounce his first name. I'm not even going to try, but it's Joachim. Is his first name. Ronenberg is his last name. I'm guessing that's how it's pronounced. Yeah. God bless him. Thank him for his service. And, just a really cool story about a guy who did a lot. And I think here in the U.S., we think a lot about what the U.S. did to defeat the Nazis. And let's be honest, we did a hefty majority of the Nazi beating. But there was a lot that other countries did, and this is definitely one of them. They kept the Nazis from getting a nuke, so I think that's very important. All right, so we are going to go ahead and play the next song, the next classic rock song. It is going to be Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones. Hi, this is Sam with A Bit Too Much to Think. Unfortunately, due to copyright reasons, we cannot upload the music to YouTube. So if you'd like to listen to it and get the full experience, listen to us live 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. on Fridays on Radio KUST on Mixlr. That's mixlr.com/KUST-radio. Thanks for listening. All right, welcome back to A Bit Too Much to Think live on KUST on Mixlr. Up next, we do in fact have Elizabeth Warren, Senator Elizabeth Warren, on with us here to talk about her recent discovery of apparent Native American heritage. And she is with us right now. So, Senator Warren, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So I understand that it was finally settled. You do in fact have Native American heritage. Is that correct?
That is correct. I am actually partly Native American.
Is it true that that part is 1 in 1,000th?
Well, that's not exactly how I would describe it. I mean, it really is more how I feel. The amount and the percentage doesn't really matter. It's more how you feel on the inside and what you believe.
Okay, I'm not entirely sure where to go with that, but let's just say sure. Are you aware that so you're about 1% Native American according to this? Are you aware that the average white American is actually about 2% Native American, so you're actually less than the average.
I don't feel like I am. I'm pretty sure I am. I have that heritage, and people should really respect me and respect my heritage. The percent doesn't matter. It's the what you recognize as your heritage that matters.
Okay, so you say you feel as though you are Native American. You've spoken a lot about how you're Cherokee. You even used it when you were a professor at Harvard. So this is clearly something that you've felt for a long time. Did you hear the response from the Cherokee Nation saying that you are not in fact Cherokee?
I did. I did hear that, but I think that they were just saying that because I wasn't, I'm not registered and I don't live on tribal lands. So, I think they're just trying to say that even though I don't live there, they're not saying I'm not. They're just saying, I don't actively participate.
Don't you think it's a little dishonest to tout yourself as Native American?
No, I don't think that at all. It is again, the tests have proved I am partly Native American. So what's wrong with saying that I am? I'm accepting my heritage and being proud.
I saying the word heritage is a little difficult. I don't know if I would agree with that, but let's go with it. Uh, has there been a lot of backlash in your family about your Native American heritage? Has your family talked to you about it?
They have talked to me about it, and they support me all the way. They support that I am vocal about this and that I want to talk about it and use it on a political platform.
Are you going to involve this at all with your potential presidential run in 2020? Now I know, you're not gonna admit it right away, but there's some speculation that you might run in 2020. Do you think that you you might use part of this heritage to for your own benefit?
I can't say for sure if I'm going to run yet or not. It's a little too
Well,
early,
of
but
course, of course.
if I do decide to run, yes, I probably will use it as part of my platform, and it will come up, and I will continue to support.
How often do you get called Pocahontas?
That is a new one. I'm not sure I've ever been called that before, but it's not the worst thing I've ever been called.
Well, that's what President Trump has been calling you, is Pocahontas. I I think with being 1% Native American, uh, well, let me phrase it this way. Did you know that most people are about 1% Neanderthal?
Well, again, that's just part of our heritage, and we should accept and embrace that.
Would you consider yourself a Neanderthal then?
Why, of course I would. I mean, again, it's part of my heritage.
Well, That's just lovely to hear. The Neanderthal Elizabeth Warren. Thank you so much, Senator Warren, for being on. We hope to have you back.
Thank you for having me. And again, please vote for me.
All right. Thank you so much. That was Senator Elizabeth Warren. She's apparently part Neanderthal and accepts that as who she is. All right. Maybe if she wins president, she'll not only be the first women female president, but she'll also be the first ever non-human president because Neanderthals are actually very different from people. So I guess we'll find out. We're gonna switch a little bit to some wholesome news, because the news is too depressing nowadays. So we got to hear some good things. So this one is about this guy from Australia who he helped evacuate passengers from a sinking 737 after it crash landed in Micronesia. It was last month, apparently. So this was a guy, he was a former Australian Navy clearance diver who currently lives in Micronesia, and he was on board the flight, apparently, when it undershot the runway. It says by 145 meters. I'm getting this from ABC, the Australian ABC news site, and it says that he was on board the flight that I believe it was the flight that crashed, and he helped people escape from it. And so he was able to. He was trying to he was trying to help a guy, trying to help people escape and everything. And he said, "Can you find the inflation cord?" And they couldn't find the inflation cord, so eventually they were able to find it and inflate the life raft. And then apparently the biggest thing with this is that he and I think two other people on the flight evacuated most of the 35 passengers who were on board without any crew assistance. So the crew, basically, the cabin crew, just kind of left. And they never did. He says he didn't see them do any head count or check names against a flight manifest or anything. He said he doesn't know if it didn't happen. But, I mean, this guy saved a ton of people's lives. And this guy, risked his own life because he could have been stuck. He could have ended up drowning. I mean, very serious, dangerous situation, really. And he saved people, which is incredible. Much like the guy I talked about before, this man should be considered a hero. Yeah, absolutely. It also says a group of sailors with the U.S. Navy who've been training nearby were also key to the rescue. And but the biggest thing is that this guy, he was, the former Australian Navy guy. This guy, he deserves to have his name out there. He deserves to be an absolute celebrity. His name is Adam Milburn, and he actually re-entered this plane while it was sinking to search for survivors, and that's just incredible to me. That guy deserves medals. He deserves our honor. He even said, and this is how you know that he really is a hero, that he feels embarrassed to be called a hero because he didn't really feel as though he was initially. I mean, but I think most of us would call this guy a hero. So there's some wholesome news for you. The world is not as bad as we think it is, and really, a good person helping people can really change everything. I mean, it sounds kind of cheesy, one good person can change the world, but and one good person can't really change the whole world. But I think one good person being willing to help in a dangerous situation or a difficult situation can really help the situation become significantly better, and in this case can save lives. Yeah, really incredible guy. He really deserves to be called a hero. He deserves our honor, really, because yeah, I mean, this guy re-entered a sinking plane to try to find people that were survivors. So really an amazing fellow. And he's Australian, so he probably has a really, really cool accent. So, next we are going to be going back to some classic rock. We are going to be listening to Walk This Way by Aerosmith. Hi, this is Sam with A Bit Too Much to Think. Unfortunately, due to copyright reasons, we cannot upload the music to YouTube. So if you'd like to listen to it and get the full experience, listen to us live 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. on Fridays on Radio KUST on Mixlr. That's mixlr.com/KUST-radio. Thanks for listening. All right, welcome back to A Bit Too Much to Think live on KUST Radio. That was Walk This Way by Aerosmith. So I got just a little bit, just kind of this last little bit that I like to do, and I like to end it with a bit of something to think about. And more recently, I talked about two different ideas of government. One of them being kind of ensuring as best you can of equal outcomes, or at least equal resources, equal access, that kind of thing. And another one ensuring that government protects specifically life, liberty, property, and contracts, and that's about what's justified for government to do. Today I want to talk a little bit about the fact that no one else is responsible for your happiness or your success. You are responsible for your own happiness and success. Now, obviously, I would be an idiot if I didn't mention the fact that, parents help their kids a lot, and my parents have helped me so crazy much. They have sacrificed a lot for me to get where I am, but now that I'm an adult and I'm on my own, and I think the second that you become independent of your parents, no one else is responsible for your success in any way. You are responsible for your own outcomes. Now, if there is something in your life that is preventing you from finding the most amount of success, that as best you can, you should try to mitigate that. And I think there are external forces that work to mitigate that, such as, if, there were Jim Crow laws that prevented African Americans from really succeeding in this country, and we got rid of the Jim Crow laws, right? So it's that kind of idea of if there's something in your way, like there's someone stealing from you constantly, we have the law that stops them from doing that. Law enforcement will stop them, or at least hopefully they would be able to. But barring that kind of thing, I would say, barring an external force on your success and your happiness, you are responsible for it. And I think that's a really tough pill to swallow, and it sounds a little bit too much like most people's dads, just kind of giving them a stern but loving talking to. But I think it's something that more people need to hear now than ever. And I think that it's not told to people nearly enough, especially not to college students. College is weird because you get all the independence of being an adult, but oftentimes you still have the parental influence on you. And it makes a college student really not want to act like a real adult and be independent enough to be responsible for their own happiness and their success. But the point is, no one else is responsible for how happy you are than you. You are the only person that can determine whether or not you are happy, whether or not you are successful. No one else can determine that for you. And I think that's partially a frustrating thing to deal with, but I think it's a really, really exciting thing when you hear it. Because all of a sudden it means no one can stop you, right? Literally, like your world is in the palm of your hand. And I think that's a really liberating thing. I think it's a really exciting thing. And I think it's a really good thing for people to hear, know, and understand. But I think that a lot of people don't want to think that way. And that if something is, if they're not happy with where they are in life, they don't blame themselves. They try to find this external force to blame, which is not only sad and, quite frankly, a little pathetic, it's dishonest. Because you are responsible for your success in a free society. Whether or not you get the job that you want is determined by how much hard work you've put in, how much you were able to get from your education, what other jobs you're able to get, and that, again, falls back on how hard you worked, how much education, so it all builds on itself. How happy you are, I think, is really up to your mindset more than anything. Because you can be in some of the worst situations in the world and still be happy, and you can be in some of the best situations in the world and be depressed as heck. I mean, look at some of these celebrities. They are rich beyond all imagination. People love them, and not a lot of them are very happy. So it's not, things won't, they always say, money can't buy happiness. It can buy security. It can buy, peace of mind. But it can't buy happiness. Only you can bring your own happiness. And only you can bring your own success. No one else can do it for you. And there will always be people to help you. There will always be people, oftentimes there are people that are sacrificing for you, like especially parents, like mine did a great deal. But that doesn't mean that at the end of the day, they're responsible for your happiness and your success your entire life. Eventually, you become independent and you are responsible for it. Now, some of that even goes into in college. When you're getting a degree in feminist dance therapy with a minor in underwater basket weaving, and then freaking out when you can't find a job. And saying it's the result of, these rich, greedy corporations. That's someone else being responsible for your lack of success, which is blatantly untrue. It can be really difficult to get a degree in STEM or, one of the fields that are in high demand right now, like communications. But it can be much more difficult. It can be much more difficult, but it's important that you make that sacrifice because it's up to you for you to succeed. It's not up to anyone else. And if up until now you've been screwing up in your life or not really taking control of it, that's totally fine. From now on, you can start taking control of it, but you have to realize that you are responsible for your own happiness. You are responsible for your own success. Barring serious external factors, no one else really cares about you enough to limit you. And what I mean by that is there's no one person that's out there just like, I'm going to mess with this guy's life here. This guy here is right there. I'm going to mess with his life his whole life. Like no one cares enough about you to do that, which again, sounds kind of sad, but in a way it's really freeing. I don't know. I think it's a very good thing. I think it's a very positive thing, and when I think about it, I like it. The fact that everything that I do, basically once I gain full independence of other people, is entirely up to me. I think that's super exciting, because it means, again, I have my entire world in the palm of my hand. And I can take it and do whatever I want with it. And I think that's really, really exciting. And I also think that not nearly enough people realize that, think about it, or understand that. So, a little bit to think about for this week. You are responsible for your own happiness and your own success. This may have sounded like a stern but loving father giving you a talking to. But it wasn't. It's just a guy trying to be honest. So, we are going to exit today with the song Layla by Derek and the Dominoes. Thank you so much to everyone listening. I really appreciate everyone catching in, whether it's live on the show or listening on YouTube. Thank you so much. And you can always catch me next week and every Friday after that, 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. on mixlr.com/KUST-radio. Thank you so much for listening.